changes into a weapon or a drug. You can be the outcast, be the backlash, somebody's lack of love. Where you can start speaking up. Nothing's gonna hurt you the way the words do when they settle beneath your skin. Kept on the inside, no sunlight, sometimes there's shadows when I wonder what would happen if you say what you're gonna say. Let the words fall out. Honestly, I wanna see you be brave. What you wanna say. Let the words fall out. Honestly, I wanna see you be brave. I just wanna see you. I just want to see you. I just wanna see you. I wanna see you be brave. I just wanna see you. Just want to see. I just wanna see you. Everybody's been there, everybody's been stared down by the enemy. Fallen for the fear and done some disappearing. Bow down to the mighty. Don't run, stop holding your tongue. Maybe there's a way out of the cage where you live. Maybe one of these days you can let the light in. Show me how big your brave is. Say what you wanna say. Let the words fall out. Honestly, I wanna see you be brave. What you wanna say. Let the words fall out. Honestly, I wanna see you be brave. I just wanna see you. I just want to see you. I just wanna see you. I wanna see you be brave. I just wanna see you. Just want to see you. I just wanna see you. I wanna see you be brave.
Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. So I'm Jennifer Marshall. I'm the co-founder and executive director of This Is My Brave. I founded this nonprofit organization more than 5 years ago to give a voice to people in recovery from mental illness. Every story told on stage helps shine a light on mental illness and addiction. Since our founding, more than 725 storytellers have shared their personal experience on stage in 57 shows in 35 cities in the United States and Australia to more than 14,000 audience members. The drive to create This Is My Brave was born out of my own personal experience with mental illness. Nearly 14 years ago, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. During the first 5 years of living with this condition, I was hospitalized 4 times. The year I received my diagnosis, 2006, was the longest, darkest time in my life. Hearing the words bipolar disorder and mental illness from the psychiatrist who diagnosed me made my entire body shut down. I was forced to quit my 6-figure recruiting job in order to focus on getting well. It became nearly impossible to get out of bed every morning. Even the thought of taking a shower was completely overwhelming. Anxiety robbed me of joy that year, and the severity of my depression was convincing me that life wasn't worth living. Probably the worst part of that year was the isolation caused by the intensity of the shame I felt about what had happened to me. I just wanted to be normal. I didn't want to be labeled mentally ill. The shame made me feel broken and like I wasn't good enough, which caused me to isolate and withdraw from my friends. My journey with mental illness is not unlike the way most of us struggle with it. I hid my pain and I feared I'd never get better. Thankfully, that horrible chapter of my life didn't last forever. Through the support of my loving family and good doctors finding the right medicine for me, I was able to find solid recovery in 2010. And when I began on that recovery path, I was desperate to find stories from other people like me who had found a way to live successful, fulfilling lives despite a lifelong diagnosis with no cure. The only problem was that no one in my circle of friends or family was talking about it. So I did what most of us do when we're searching for something. I turned to the internet. I found a community of people who were blogging about their mental illnesses in such a way that I was inspired by their courage. I began blogging anonymously in 2011 and wrote for a year and a half as just bipolar mom, until finally deciding to go public when an editor from What to Expect, the book that most women read when they're expecting, contacted me to write with my real name about living with bipolar and being a mom. The day my story went public on the homepage of AOL, I felt incredibly empowered and free of the shame that had clung to me for so many years. The outpouring of support was overwhelming and all positive. So many people related to my story and wrote to say thank you for being so open. They could see themselves, their siblings, their neighbors, their parents, their spouses in my story. We all know someone who is living with mental illness, whether we know it or not. Several months later, I had the idea to launch a project when I met Anne-Marie at a party. And she recognized me from my blog. She said, "You're bipolar mom." And when she was introduced to me, and I said, "Yeah, most people call me Jen." She shared my passion for wanting to change the conversation about mental illness. We wanted to give others that same opportunity I had months prior, a platform on which to share their stories. It was 2013, and the Sara Bareilles song Brave, which you heard Josh so beautifully play a rendition of today, had just hit the radio. One particular verse of the lyrics hit me really hard. "Your history of silence won't do you any good. Did you think it would? Let your words be anything but empty. Why don't you tell them the truth?" The song moved us so much, we acquired the license from songwriters Sara Bareilles and Jack Antonoff, and we play it before all of our shows. It's kind of become our unofficial theme song. About 45 million people live with mental illness, so my story is far from unique. What makes this organization extraordinary are the courageous people who have come forward to share their inspiring stories, as well as those who work tirelessly behind the scenes, including our program manager, Lauren Kenny, who's with me here today, and many of our local producers who make these shows possible through months of passion and hard work. Our brave Houston cast is joining an ever-growing community of storytellers who have decided to be brave and put their stories out there. More than 725 heartbreaking and inspiring stories of resilience. Tonight is our 58th show. And This Is My Brave is where it is today because of the many brave individuals who have joined our organization's mission. It is a privilege to sit in the audience and take in these powerful stories. Some of our storytellers are experienced speakers or performers. Others are standing on stage for the very first time, sharing aspects of their lives previously kept secret. You may feel a piece of yourself in the stories that are shared this afternoon. We've actually had audience members tell us after a show that they never realized they dealt with anxiety and depression until hearing from our storytellers. And this is the first step towards finding help. Following the show, you can visit our website, which can be found inside your program. You'll also find information on how to take a free and confidential Mental Health America screening through our partnership with MHA. It's a great way to get a read on your mental health, and you can take that information to your healthcare provider. I'm almost done, I promise. Our organization was devastated in the fall of 2017, August 23rd, 2017, when our co-founder Anne-Marie Ames passed away suddenly from a heart attack. In my grief, it was hard to imagine going on without her. But then I remember why we started. It's moments like the one after our very first show, when a woman came up to me in the lobby and told me that she and her husband had driven all the way from Philadelphia to see our show because she had found my blog in her darkest moments and my writing saved her life. That's the power of storytelling. This Is My Brave will continue to share powerful stories, bringing mental illness and addiction into the spotlight through our community shows, at least 12 this year in the US and 1 in Australia. We have a new college pilot program launching this fall in Boston, and we're shooting a feature-length documentary film following after the short, and we're currently fundraising for that, so you'll see that on the documentary page of our site. As I said in that trailer, This Is My Brave's mission is to get to a place where one day we live in a world where we don't have to call it brave for talking openly about mental illness and addiction. We'll just call it talking. We're going to do that right here tonight, one story, one person at a time. So if you'll please help me welcome the two co-producers of our show who helped bring this to Texas for the very first time, Melissa Nolan and Casey Marr.
Right. Let's do this.
Yeah. Okay. Welcome to This Is My Brave, the show Houston.
Woo!
I'm Melissa.
I'm Casey.
We'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight to witness the Houston area shine a light on mental health issues to end stigma. First and foremost, we'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Our 2019 season of shows wouldn't be possible without the support of our national sponsors, Janssen, Sage Therapeutics, and Alkermes. We would also like to thank Greenbrook TMS, the Women's Home, the Hackett Center, Lundbeck, and the Menninger Clinic. Tonight's show would also not be possible without the generosity of our brave community. So special thanks to our photographer, Stephen McFarland, and our videographer, Daniel Angiulo. To Ashley Messina with Jason's Deli for providing food for the cast, Molly LaFucci, Colleen Schmidt, and Joanne Simpson Martinez for tirelessly donating time and support to help make tonight possible. To Chris Ackberry from the iTex Group for donating beautiful space for both auditions and rehearsals. This Is My Brave, the show, would not exist without the phenomenal support from the founder, Jennifer Marshall, and the program director, Lauren Kinney, and our phenomenal cast, who you will meet very, very soon. We also could not have done this without our own individual support networks, and we want to extend a warm welcome and thank you to our husbands, friends, and families for their continual love and encouragement. Your generous support of our mission is so greatly appreciated, so thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay, before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items. The topic of mental health and mental illness can be difficult to talk about. If at any time you need to step out of the theater, please do so. Our mental health professional, Joanne Simpson Martinez, please stand. Amazing person, Joanne. All right.
Joanne.
Joanne. There she is. You can also utilize the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline by calling 1-800-273-8255. You can also text the word BRAVE to 741-741 to text with a professional. Now, everyone should have received a program when you checked in or entered into the theater. Inside, you'll find all of your cast members and sponsors, so please pick one up if you haven't received one. If everyone could now take out their cell phone, we're a very social organization, having received our start, thankful to Kickstarter. And we want to take lots of pictures, selfies, video clips, and share these on your social networks with the hashtag Live Brave or hashtag Storytelling Saves Lives. What you're about to experience defines what it means to live brave. And we need your help to tell the world we're here and they can learn what it means to live brave too. So share away, don't be shy, and we will be doing the best to retweet and regram. I never know how to say that. As many posts as possible.
Thank you for your help. We appreciate it. Now would also be a good time to make sure you turn your phone on silent for the duration of the show. Since This Is My Brave is a storytelling organization, we thought it would make sense to tell you a little bit of the story of how we got involved. And I'll let Casey take it away.
All right. I was cast in the May 2018 Boston show, and and I realized there wasn't a show in Texas, and I thought, well, that's absolutely absurd. So I knew I had to bring it home, but I couldn't do it by myself. And after seeing many of my posts on social media and following my journey, this phenomenal being next to me reached out to be a part of the movement, and I just so happened to be in Houston, and we set a date to meet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Casey and I have known each other since kindergarten, which is quite a while.
A long time ago.
We both not only live with mental illness ourselves, but have also both experienced the impact of mental illness on those that we love. Casey's brother Billy, who is also a friend of mine, passed away 2 years ago from an accidental overdose and suffered from anxiety and PTSD. My best friend Bronwyn, one of our classmates, ended her life at the age of 19. Through this experience, Casey and I have developed a beautiful friendship. We have gained strength, courage, and wisdom, allowing us to continue to fight to end the stigma and shame that surrounds mental illness. We do it for ourselves and those we love, those who have left us, and those who continue to fight every day.
Now, we're about to take you on a journey. You will laugh and you will cry. You will be enlightened, inspired, and our hope is that you will leave with a transformed perception of the invisibleness of mental illness. Thanks to the brave cast members, Mista. Because this is a reality. 1 in 5 Americans lives with a diagnosable mental health disorder. But because we don't talk enough about mental illness, people suffer in silence. This changes tonight, right here on this stage. I got goosebumps, sorry. We're shining a light on mental illness to show the world that we are your friends, your colleagues, religious leaders, neighbors, and community.
We hope that through our storytelling, you will better understand mental illness and will be able to be supportive to those in your life who may experience it. You may be inspired to share your own story. It's when we share our stories that we open up the conversation, and storytelling does save lives. So let's get started. At this moment, I'd like to welcome our brave cast to the stage. And at this moment, I would also like to introduce our very first brave storyteller of the night, Casey Marr. Oh.
All right, so this is my third time on this, not this particular stage, but a stage for This Is My Brave. It's a profound privilege that I get to do and share and be present for a miracle. You're all going to experience one tonight, and as a meditation and yoga teacher, I know the best way to do that is to take a few deep breaths. So if everybody would just join me. Guys behind me too. All right, we're just going to take a slow, deep inhale. Breathe it in. Let it go. It wasn't loud enough on the exhale. Inhale. Let it go. One more time. Inhale. And just let it go. There you go. Now we're ready. All right, let's get the show started. So, I grew up in Beaumont, Texas. There should be some people. I went to Monsignor Kelly Catholic High School. Right. Now, back in the day, Monsignor, they had academic award ceremonies. And this was before email, so your parents would receive a letter in the mail stating that your child would be receiving an academic award. Well, Pete and Judy, my mom and dad, they received a letter in the mail stating that I would be receiving an academic award. And so one of my strengths is not academics. So we actually got a good laugh about it, and we're like, well, surely this is a mistake, but nonetheless, I was like, well, I'll wear my best uniform and I'll show up. So I did, and Dr. Gagne, our principal at the time, she called all the academic awards out, and my name wasn't mentioned, wasn't a shock. And then the last award was called out, the Love of Life Award. Dr. Gagne gave that award to me. And it was a very special award because it was in honor of Gina Sharp, who is my very best friend's cousin, Jessica. She's here. So I got this, and I was Two emotions. I was shocked and excited, and then I felt fear. Shocked and excited because, whoa, I couldn't believe people thought that about me, but then excited because I will tell you all this much, I've always wanted to receive an award. I really wanted to receive an Oscar, but I just thought this was like bringing me, I was like, this is good, and then I'm gonna get there. So I was super excited, but then I got home, and that's when fear set in. And fear set in because everybody was buying my show, my act. I didn't love life at all. I did not love myself at all. And I really, at this point, didn't think anybody in the world could ever love me at all. Now, I was beginning to spiral down what I like to call the deep, dark hole of depression. Now, around that same time, I got wind of a nickname a classmate made up of me, OC. It stood for Original Crazy. Again, I was shocked and confused. Shocked because how could two people have two completely different perceptions of me? And then confused because this was the 1990s. And I was like, I'm pretty sure it wasn't the first one, but okay. But in their defense, that's what I was portraying. I would pretend as much as I possibly could, and then I'd spiral. So I was fighting. I was so confused. 2 years later, I would attempt suicide for the first time. I would jump off the bridge. I'd jump off a bridge. And then 2 times after that, I would accidentally overdose. I'd be hospitalized 3 times, and I would be diagnosed with OCD, ADD, eating disorders, severe depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. Now, most of you are probably thinking like, ooh, that doesn't sound too great to me. But I actually found comfort in it because I finally knew that I had something. But I began to use it as my identity. And when I did that, it introduced me to 3 of my favorite drugs: blame, shame, and guilt. I blamed other people, and I made other people feel shame and guilt for my diagnosis. Just so you know, people don't like to be blamed for other people's problems. I learned that the hard way. So I'd have to begin to find a new way to cope. And I did. I did a ton of soul searching, a ton of therapy. Thank you, Pete and Judy, for paying for it. God bless their souls. And I really got to a point where I thought I was doing good. Then I had my first son. Now, something magical happened. I understood actually what divine love is. I had my second son, and I understood it on a deeper level. And I became so powerful, and I began to look at everything in a different light. You could say I was loving life. Now, that was great until March of 2016. My husband had just received a job promotion, and we had moved to the suburbs of Boston. Now, I can't go into this. It's a completely different speech, but I was just having a real difficult time with this move. It was our 7th one. It was a real tough one. And around that same time, my sister calls me, and she tells me that our mother's cancer treatment was not going well. That was in April. My mom died on May 1st. I wasn't prepared for the amount of grief I was going to go through. The year following her death was one of the most difficult years of my whole entire life because grief began to feel like that very deep, deep, dark hole of depression. And I had to keep telling myself that that's not what was happening. Around that same time, my brother, who was very familiar with that dark hole and an addict, relapsed 3 times in that year. It was one of the most excruciating things to watch somebody fall apart and to try to tell them at the same time to fight whenever I felt like I was falling apart. My sister, his beautiful ex-wife, and his friends did the best job that we possibly could have done to support him as best we could. Billy passed away on May 14th. That was Mother's Day. They found him the next day in his home. I couldn't have his story end in pain. And I began to fight even harder every day to keep myself alive, but then to keep his memory alive, but to make his story end in something other than the way that it did. And right now, I'm going to share with you something he wrote. He wrote it in his last treatment center. It was an art therapy, and he was an artist and a photographer, and he hadn't even scratched the surface of where he could have gone. He says, I was allowed to pick 3 historical and fine art figures and apply them to my life. The first symbolized my past. It was a picture of a forest with a winding path through the middle. The picture seemed to have the 4 seasons represented in it. Fall was the first part and was filled with darkness and trees with red leaves. The second part had lush, green-filled trees with the sun shining through. Both summer and spring were represented here. The furthest part symbolized winter. The trees became blue and cold, and this was saying that if I continued on the path that I was on, it was going to be lonely, dark, and isolating, and it would end in me embracing death. And this picture symbolized cycles, rebirth, death, and life to me. The second picture was about my present-day state of mind. It's a girl taking a photograph in a crowded market. She is taking a shot where no one else in the image is looking at her. This is saying to me that I am beautiful. And when no one is looking at me, I should know that. It's also a God wink because it's a photography picture. The last, it symbolizes my future. It's a picture of a sphinx. This represents my strength and perseverance. I am strong, and I may lose some qualities throughout my life, but I won't waver from my treatment or my sobriety or my positive thinking. I really loved this therapy. I know I can do this, and God has given me the tools to do it. Now, I wish he was standing on stage with me, but he's not, and I made him a promise that I would continue to wake up and to fight so I could end the shame and the stigma surrounding this illness. Now back to the love of life and the original crazy. The definition of original means pretty much one of a kind and the first. And the definition of crazy means mentally deranged, but can also mean, FYI, extremely enthusiastic. So, tonight, I need to thank my principal and my classmate, who I still don't know who this person was, for knowing me before I knew myself. Because I sure as hell have to be originally crazy to stand up here in front of y'all, to be vulnerable and honest about how I wake up every damn day to try to love my life so that I can inspire others to do the exact same thing, so that we can end the shame and the stigma surrounding this illness, so that we can put more love into this world. And I think we can all agree we need more love. Thank you. All right. Thank you very, very much. It is an honor and a privilege for me to introduce the next storyteller, a classmate of mine who is also familiar with the term of crazy and being called it, right? Dr. Joshua Britt.
I am highly offended. So I've always heard people say, be careful what you wish for, you just might get it. Every time I was at the depth of despair, the end of my rope during my 6.5, 7 years as a heroin addict, I would tell myself, this has to stop. Got to find a way out of here. And I would hope and I'd pray and I'd put that out into the universe. And every time the universe would answer by sending the damn cops. And every time I would sit in some county jail and I would say, hey, thank you so much, universe. This is exactly what I needed right here. No, I'm just kidding. That's not what I was saying. So, anyways, the last time I went through this was December 2nd, 2016. I've not used drugs since, and for that, I am truly grateful. That day, my prayer was answered in the form of a tactical squad that arrived at my apartment. They caught me trying to open the second-story bedroom window, thwarting my plan to drop down into an alleyway and slip out the back. They were driving me to jail, and one of these guys, they asked me, they go, yo, man, were you really going to jump out of that window? And I was like, what? No, I just needed a little air. You know, the other guy sitting on the passenger side, he said, so are you really some kind of doctor or something? And I responded, yeah, something like that. I'm sure he was asking me because at the time I looked like I was an extra from The Walking Dead, and he was like, I had to pull the wrong file or something like that, you know. He said something I'll never forget. He said, man, you need to get yourself together. You could be helping a lot of people. So as I stand before you all today, I'd like to say thanks, officer, whatever your name is. 10 years ago, I was a successful graduate student at UT Austin. I was a young neuroscientist and a musician. I just released my first solo album. I was playing shows every other week or so. I just entered final candidacy for my doctorate. I enjoyed these areas of my life immensely, but I always had this nagging feeling like I was missing something. I was stressed out all the time. I just didn't feel at home in my own skin. I had a breakthrough during the final project I was working on for my PhD. I demonstrated that severed nerves could be fused back together using this polymer that I had been working with for years. I demonstrated that you could do this in living mammals and that function could be restored, and this was a big deal that had never been done before. The results were impressive. I wrote the paper and I sent it off to a good journal. The scientist I'd been working with for most of my adult life took my work and published it under his name in a different journal and removed me from the patent that we had secured for the procedure. So we had had a falling out, and he actually told me that I didn't deserve it. So what happened next is really difficult for me to explain to people because I guess people handle things differently. But for me, the best way I could summarize it is I just gave up on myself, and I gave up on life. My only drive was to obliterate all my feelings, and I sought escape in heroin. For the next 7 years, I was basically lost. I struggled to find my way out of the darkness, homelessness, jails, rehabilitation centers, 12-step programs, relapse after relapse. My life was in chaos. I couldn't see it at the time, but my addiction was a result of my inability to cope with a way of living that was very unhealthy for somebody like me. This last time I knew I was going beyond just county jail for a week or a few weeks. I knew I was going to be locked up for a minute. So I was sent to a prison rehabilitation unit way out in Breckenridge, Texas. And I would be locked up for almost a year. I decided to try and find myself and my willpower and to give life a try again. I did more internal work during that time than I've ever done in my entire life. And here's what I found. I spent my whole life looking outside of myself to get some measure of my self-worth. What did my life look like compared to others? Was my latest project well received? What did that person really mean when they said this or that to me? This is an excellent way to build a life that runs on fear, anxiety, and superficiality. Living this way pushed me more and more to look for ways to escape what I was feeling. At the time, I was busy trying to please everyone around me, and I had this crazy notion that if I could make everyone else happy, that I would be happy too. I was neglecting my own soul, suppressing my own inner voice. Escape was all I had left. And then even that stopped working. Finally, I was incarcerated long enough that I had nothing but time to sit with my own failure and contemplate what it meant to me. What was driving me to run all this time, to make the same poor decisions? What was my drug addiction really about? What were the common threads underlying my lack of healthy boundaries, my people-pleasing, and all the other things that created this mess I now found myself in? I stopped looking outside myself, and I started looking within. I started practicing greater self-awareness and mindfulness, and I started seeing these little lessons in everything around me. What if this huge failure didn't have to be a failure at all? So in prison, I would sit and meditate, looking out of this window. I'd watch the sunset to the right of these 3 trees that were lined up in the yard. The tree on the left was totally dead and barren. Looked like it had been for some time. The middle one was alive and well, and the one on the right was lush and thriving. One day the sun was setting and I was there meditating, and the symbolism hit me in a profound way. I was looking at my past, my present, and my future. Within a week of this meditation, they chopped down the dead tree on the left. I knew at that point that the work I had done was profound, and I took this as a sort of symbolic confirmation. I no longer had to feel haunted by my past. My journey through all of this has led me to something I never had before, a genuine sense of self-worth that comes from within. And that looks more like success to me than anything I've ever known. Thank you. And now get ready for some goosebumps. Please welcome our next brave storyteller, Nicole.
Hey y'all, my name is Nicole. I am a poet and adolescent psychiatric nurse surviving with PTSD. The piece I'm performing today took me almost 2 years to write. I normally find it easy to be vulnerable in my work, but it was difficult for me to talk about my own struggle with suicide and self-harm because there's such a stigma around mental health. I'm here today to share my story, to be for someone else the light I needed when I was younger. For suicidal kids whose bodies have become the caskets that were always out of reach. For incomplete suicides, charcoal pumps, stomachs, razor blades, scarred bodies, and carousel horse hearts, racing to a finish line that never comes. This one's for us. By the time I was 16, I had already told myself I wouldn't live long enough to graduate college. It's been years since I walked across the stage and accepted my diploma, and yet I still can't shake off how out of place I feel in all this alive. I'm 1,700 miles and over 7 years away from the monsters in my bed, but I've still got their scratch marks on my closet floor. Every morning when I get dressed, I'm scared they will drag me in with them, strip off this skin, leave me bare-boned and bleeding, bury me under the floorboards of my own anxiety. I know they can't hurt me anymore, but I don't know if there's anything left in me to hurt. I know milk sours to clumps. Contact solution can cause ulcers and blindness. But what happens when a person lives past their expiration date? I know I'm not the only one. I know there are more out there like me. Suicidal kids turn trauma too far in the past to justify being suicidal now adults. As if grieving loss has a time limit. As if the most intimate of betrayals needs to be forgiven when the statute of limitation runs out. Are these the kinds of things we ever really get over? Or do we just get better at pretending they never happened? Become experts in the craft of avoidance? Carry socially acceptable excuses on the tip of our tongues when people ask about our scars? Make a home in our throat for our best? I'm just really tired this week. My contacts are acting up. You know, I'd love to come out, but I have so much to do. Don't get me wrong. It's not like most days are bad. It's just that a lot of days are not good. It always feels like something is missing, like healing keeps slipping through my fingers. I'm 25 now. I work with kids who feel more lithium than teenager. Kids with warning labels etched into their battery packs because some batteries are known to explode when their time is up. I work with kids who sound a lot like I did, who live a lot like I did. They tell me they're happy I'm alive. And they don't know that there were days I almost wasn't. They make me believe that maybe I wasn't meant to leave. Maybe I'm not as flammable as I thought. Not an explosion waiting to happen, maybe. Survivors are the rechargeable batteries of souls. The ones meant to stay. Stay useful. Stay safe. The life of a rechargeable battery depends on how well you care for it. And we just need a safe place to rest while we get our strength back. Who knows better than us the comfort a night light can hold? The importance of power. We continue to fill ourselves up so we can shed light on others. So we can wake up another day, Be a light in someone else's darkness, a reminder that the monsters don't always win. They do not get to take it all. There is a light at the end of this, even if we have to make it for ourselves. Thank you. And now I'd like to welcome our next brave storyteller, Gayle Best.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming out this afternoon. I want to tell you how honored I am to be up here and be part of this miracle these people are creating. You get to see magic today. My name is Gayle Best, and I am a mental health peer specialist and a musician. And I live with major depression and anxiety disorder. A wise man once said, "Every accomplishment begins with the decision to try." But how do you try when it seems insurmountable to try? That was my life. I always dreamed of being a singer. I didn't know how I was going to do that, since some days getting out of bed seemed almost impossible. Then one day I found therapy and medication and lots of self-help books and internal work. And I learned that I could heal and I could move forward with my life. And then I reached my mid-40s and I realized that that idea of being a singer was still some distant dream. And a friend gave me a card and it had a Wayne Dyer quote on it that said, "Don't die with your music still in you." That was the push I needed. That was the day I decided to try. And since then, 20 plus years, I have been a working musician. A singer, a songwriter, and last year, working with a group of fantastic musicians, I released a CD of all original music. And today, I'm going to sing a song off my album. I hope you like it. Can't understand what's going on with me. I know it doesn't make sense, but it's just how I am. It's easier to pretend that everything's okay than try to explain why I'm this way. Sometimes I'm okay standing in the light, of this pain. World just can't stay this gray. Help me find a way. Help me find a way. Help me find a way back to the light. Has to be a way to make it out of this pain. World just can't stay this gray. No, you can't understand what's going on with me. No, it doesn't make sense, but it's just how I am. It's easier to pretend that everything's okay than try to explain why I'm this way. Sometimes I'm okay standing in the light. Other times it's gray. All I want to do is hide. Has to be a way to make it out of this pain. World just can't stay this gray. Thank you. And now for our next brave speaker, Sara Gish.
Whew, that's a hard act to follow, but I will try. Hang on. Okay. Hello, I'm Sara Gish, and I am in recovery from alcoholism, bulimia, binge eating, and bipolar disorder. This is my Phoenix Rising story. I spent 1 year in college sticking my finger down my throat and throwing up food. Or I binged wildly and didn't get rid of it. I started drinking at age 12 to get drunk, and I sold my mom's Valium to sell and to use. Later, I picked up strangers and drove them around in my car. I cried every time I smoked pot. I threw up on people and things many times while drinking. I hallucinated, I blacked out, I smoked cigarettes, and I had a terrifying experience with LSD where I thought sharks were biting my feet. I stopped drinking and using any drugs when I was 21, after my brother was put into treatment for alcoholism. Both my parents tried to convince me I wasn't the addict, that Jeff was, but I was in hell and I wanted a way out. 19 years after my last drink, my brother died from alcoholism, and I was diagnosed as bipolar, brought on by the stress of his death. 3 years later, I had a week-long psychotic break due to frantically trying to save a historic movie theater trying to save a historic movie theater while getting very little sleep and working long hours. It was during that break that I thought Frida Kahlo was my mother and that I had killed my children. I also thought I was an alien, the outer space kind. Before and after sobriety, I've had suicidal thoughts. Thankfully, I never attempted to kill myself, but that was mainly because I was afraid I would screw it up. It wasn't all bad. My childhood was filled with summers in Tennessee at camp, trips abroad, good schools, a family that cared for me, and loving neighbors. And yet, I had mental health challenges. Anyone can. I came by my addiction honestly. My brother was an alcoholic, my father was an alcoholic and bipolar, and my mother was an alcoholic and love addict. We were all sick people doing the best we could. I became a phoenix rising as my life was transformed out of the ashes of my own and my family's mental illnesses. I have been in recovery from alcoholism and bulimia and binge eating since 1985, and I've been managing my bipolar disease with the help of medication, lifestyle balance, and therapy since 2007. I was given grace and got sober because of my higher power and the support of my fellow addicts who also chose to stop using. I'm a business owner, a wife, a mother, an artist, a writer, a labyrinth facilitator, and a person on a mission. I was taught that in order to stay sober, I must be honest and give back. I've been doing that in a variety of ways, both in my community and through my support programs. I am very proud of my most recent endeavor. It is an art project that I plan to do for the rest of my life called Ignite Your Life. It is dedicated to my brother, and its goal is to ignite lives and create connections. I made my fourth art car, called Phoenix Rising, as part of my project in honor of my personal journey. I take road trips and photograph people and film them while asking, how do you ignite your life? I have connected with people in a deep way because of that one question, and I have had so many adventures everywhere I go, including surviving a car fire, true story, and averting someone's suicide attempt. I would not have experienced any of that if I were still using. My project is guided by my 12 ways to ignite your life daily, a list that took me 10 years to write and of which I'm very proud. Doing those 12 things each day creates a firewall to addiction, anxiety, depression, and isolation. They have literally saved my life. And if you can't remember them, the cards are outside in the lobby if you want to pick one up. Here are the 12 ways, each followed by the word summarizing it. Trust in spirit, trust. Take care of yourself, nourish. Meditate each morning, meditate. Commune with nature, commune. Listen to your heart, listen. Connect with love, love. Be of service, serve. Allow forgiveness, forgive. Always be grateful, thank. Explore your creativity, create. Learn something new, learn. Enjoy life, laugh. My story is very dark at times, and looking at me now, perhaps unbelievable. My various coping mechanisms and addictions were trying to steal my soul because it was up for grabs. I found my way back by focusing on light, by telling people who I really am, and by creating art. This is the first time I've shared so much of my story at once, and I cried a lot writing this. However, my own words comforted me because as I let them out, I am letting you see the real me, and I know I will not be judged. And perhaps you will hear some of your story and mine. I will close this out with a request that you ponder the question that I ask all my subjects in my art project. How will you ignite your life? Thank you. And please welcome our next brave storyteller, Cheryl Cash.
Today I'm going to share my brave through a poem. I lost my mother, Landa Cheryl Richardson, to suicide over 20 years ago, meaning I've lived more of my life without her than with her. You can do the math. I hid from the truth about how I lost my mother for many years, the thing that should not be spoken of, the mental illness that drove her to believe that the world would actually be a better place without her. I found my voice, and now I want to share it so that others don't have to hide like I did. Speak up, ask for help. Don't be afraid. It is okay. Together, we can do it. There is help. There's hope. And no, the world is not a better place without her. I just wish I could have told her. She left me. How could she? I'm her baby. Yeah, that's me. I'm the youngest of 4, just 20 now. The only girl. Mom, she's only 50, so how? We work together in the same office. Life can't be better. Then I hear from the bosses. Cheryl, where's your mom? She's not here. Okay, I'll call home. But now I start to fear. I jump in the car. I must go alone. The house isn't far. Surely she's still home. Along the way, a fork in the road, as if to say, this is a heavy load. Now I'm here. I open the door. It's still not clear, but I'm shaken to the core. There's a smell, but still I look. I just can't tell, but now I'm shook. Up the stairs to her bedroom, back down the stairs. I check every room to the garage. She's in the car. This is not a mirage. She has gone too far. I run to her side. Mom, Mom. I open the door, no longer calm. I scream at the top of my lungs. This isn't a dream. Her last bell has rung. Help has arrived. I know it's too late. She didn't survive. She sealed her own fate. The officer was so kind, he ran to her side. I'm losing my mind. No, she took her last ride. My world stood still. How could this be? This cannot be real. She left me. A note by the phone, a verse from a song. I'm in a twilight zone, but she knew all along. You're the reason I was alive. But why did she die? A ghost of an illness we shall not talk about. But here in this stillness, we're gonna let it out. My mom, she had bipolar. But how come it controlled her? Suicidal thoughts haunted her, kept her mind in knots, sometimes a blur. Many tries unsuccessful, many tries, how stressful. In the dark they kept me, truth so stark it haunts me. I'm the youngest of 4, just 20 now, the only girl. No one ever told me, wow. A mental illness kept hidden, and now in the stillness forgiven. If it was cancer, I'm sure they'd have an answer, a cure. But quiet she kept, and quiet she left. I don't understand. Why me? Was this planned? Please, someone tell me. 20 years later, I found a place where others would gather, a safe space. Out of the darkness, community walk, the openness of the talk. This young girl, she bravely spoke about her mind world. I started to choke. She had a disease, a curse so hidden. She just needed a release, but it was forbidden. Now I have a voice. I shouted out loud. Some don't have a choice. Therefore I've vowed to carry a torch for those who are stricken with feeling the scorch of a mind that is sickened. Mental illness is still a stigma. Now stand in that realness and let's change this enigma. Thank you. Please welcome our next brave storyteller, Janora Jones.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Janora. To simply say that I'm a mental health therapist discounts the many iterations of me who preceded. Rather, I'll say that I'm an ever-evolving being who helps others by facilitating learning, whether through process improvement, team building, leadership development, or counseling. Within this current incarnation, I walk alongside others as they create healthier relationships with themselves. Today, I'm going to read an original poem, Metaphorically So. Metaphorically so. People like to say that we start out as a blank slate, but is that really true if God has plans for us when we're born? Perhaps instead, we're more like books with invisible ink, writing stories that no one knows until they are visible on the page. So if I were to open my book and reread some of those early chapters, I might see a little girl playing with blocks, enjoying her own company, imagining great stories in mind. Tales, scripts, and powerful words for her dolls. Not princesses, but strong inventors of their future. Those creative sparks firing willy-nilly, free and unfettered. What happened? I don't know, but something did to make those sparks become muted points of light. That baby lioness to kitten, quieter and focused, observing, curious, wanting to know what was going on around her. Her fantasy world did not disappear, though. Notebooks of stories written and volumes consumed while turning out stellar grades in exchange for affirmations and praise. Teacher's pet, daddy's girl, Miss America. I felt like a stranger in my own body. I can only pinpoint this feeling at the end of middle school. Being on that HISD bus, feeling as if I were viewing myself from some distance above. Is this how birds track their prey or drones follow their subject? I don't know, but metaphorically so, the change had begun. Life versus me, or perhaps me versus me. I lived, worked, and continued to reveal pages of achievement and adventure. MIT, Duke, engineering, history, accounting, Houston, Wisconsin, Paris, Brussels, more. This kitten had become a cat, not realizing that she was slowly exhausting her 9 lives. I didn't know my life was in the eye of the storm, with mayhem and destruction still to come my way. Riding a seemingly endless escalator in a global skyscraper, I did not have time to stop. I simply excelled and enjoyed. If occasionally I needed one antidepressant or another for a lift, it was maintenance. The very terms mental health and mental illness never entered my conscious thinking until over 10 years later, when all that glass surrounding me became a mirror, highlighting those holes and gaps that had been growing since I was a teenager. When the mirror shattered and became shards, the floor finally fell away and left me in free fall. The nasty side of the storm was finally coming ashore. Still disconnected and unsure of what was happening, I began to understand that 37-year-old me was mentally ill and had been that way for most of her life. The bandages and overtures at help over the previous 2 decades had been physical attempts to work on a mental issue, and those attempts had actually made the problem worse. What had been treated as depression was really bipolar disorder. Those nights of excess energy, orchestras of ideas being made music by the version of me that wrote a novel in 2 weekends, a thesis in 2 weeks, and innumerable presentations in a night. That normal never seemed abnormal, especially when soaking in praise for a job well done. Vices? What are those? Except for that little shopping habit, the one that everyone laughed off since they never saw the Amex bills or the panic at the end of the month trying to plan for the next. While December 15, 2011 will forever be a date to remember, it was not the great deliverance that I thought it would be. Recovery is not an instant, it's a lifetime. I no longer scale heights. I love skyscrapers and planes and important deadlines, but also know they aren't healthy for me. Like a diabetic, I have to watch my input of work and other things that give me a natural high. In reconstruction, we sometimes find new callings. Being a therapist to others allows me to help others better than I was helped, to use the reality of my experience, outpatient, inpatient, and otherwise, to make for more empathic, positive mental health care. A butterfly changed does not see its beautiful wings. I remain my own worst critic and struggle many days to see the silver lining. I do, however, wake up and take the next step. I try to listen to others and absorb the good feedback. Even the ugly parts of me serve a purpose. So when does life stop feeling like a metaphor and start to feel like true living? When it ain't metaphorically so. When I can look in the mirror and say my name, Janora, and not feel like a failure. When I can honestly believe what I tell others, that this mental health journey is not my fault, that the lessons learned will help others, and that it really is never too late to create a life worth living. I am worthy. We are worthy. I am lovable. We are lovable, and we will help change the world. Please welcome our next brave storyteller, Amina Dasani.
My name is Amina. I'm lucky to be 28 years old today and a teacher. Earlier this month, I attempted to end my life, and I'm lucky that my friends were there to save me. And I'm lucky to have had this cast as a support system to get me through it. During my time in the psychiatric hospital, I have never felt more understood by those around me, and I seek to hopefully experience that more in the world. I'm also a survivor of childhood trauma and sexual violence. I live every day with major depressive disorder, anxiety disorder, and complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which manifests itself as borderline personality disorder and rheumatoid arthritis. I will emphasize that this is almost entirely the result of prolonged abuse since my earliest memory and multiple sexual assaults. I strive to be the adult that I needed when I was young, and that motivates me to live and heal so that I can help others and help society understand the reality of mental illness rather than fear it. My poem addresses the isolation and anger experienced when society unwittingly and at times hypocritically alienates or fears us. We are human too and deserve to be included in the fabric of society with all our darkness and our light. Things I'm maybe not meant for. To live on my own, independently, free of abusers and toxic enablers. This relationship. They're looking for someone more normal, I guess. I guess I'm too much to deal with. I feel too intensely and scare people away. This job. From retail to food service to journalism to teaching. Because having enough passion to fill a room, being able to make connections with tough students, to understand them, being a role model of perseverance and helping students grow isn't enough when I struggle to get up in the morning under the weight of my nightmares, paralyzed by the anxiety, or to regulate my emotions, or feel defensive of criticism, because in my mind it's a threat to my income and hard-won stability, because I'm a cocktail of meds that help me function and shouldn't be trusted around children. Look, I'm an alphabet soup of disorders, and it takes so much more from me than they'd ever know. To be able to belong, truly belong. I'm off. Too different and distorted from trauma and mental illness to fit into the fabric of society. What I hear is, maybe I'm not meant for any of this world. And I rage! Why do they always tell me to stay? Tell me there's hope. Tell me it gets better when I'm so ready to leave this world I'm not meant for. They say they want me to live, but no one actually wants to be the short straw who has to deal with me, with all of this. They hypothetically root for mental health awareness, but don't want to be anywhere around it. Just me, alone, isolated, forgotten. Often I want to escape to a place or life that is healthy for me, that understands me. So I move from home to home, job to job, relationship to relationship, seeking the stability and validation I so crave. They call it borderline personality disorder. I call it resilience and determination to find my own kind of happy, a life worth living. I define my own happy as validation, burden lifted, safety, absence of crippling fear, something that feels foreign and superficial, but only for now. What I'm not meant for is being neurotypical. Society finds us a wedge in the fabric, but we make our place in it anyway. I turn my resentment and rage into revenge, the sweetest kind, by healing, hoping, and thriving right in the faces of everyone who said I wasn't meant to. Thank you. Please welcome our next brave storyteller, Katie Barnes.
Oh dear, too tall, story of my life. All right. My name is Katie Barnes. I had my first major manic episode at 29. I was diagnosed bipolar at 27, diagnosed with anxiety at 26, depression at 24, and before that, I had no proper language for understanding and expressing the roller coaster experience that, for me, is bipolar disorder. But I had poetry and music. I wrote songs about anger and confusion, euphoria and joy, and during my freshman year of college, when I found myself overwhelmed, crying myself to sleep midday, missing classes, and wondering what was wrong with me, I wrote about it. Wrote about how struggling to do the everyday business of living can feel like drowning. Drowning in a shallow, drowning when I knew all I'd have to do is stand up. The original version of the song I'm going to sing tonight did not have a happy ending. It was a desperate attempt to explain a strange misery that nobody seemed to notice, that I was terrified to show. When I heard about the audition for this show, I revisited the song and realized I was ready to craft a new ending, an ending of hope. Hope that I have now that I didn't have before. Hope in support systems, hope in therapy and medication and coping skills, hope in reaching out and reaching out and reaching out, hope in being discovered. So I present to you, Found Out. This hill only knows one way, it's going down, down. This road only knows one way, it's going round, around. And when I'm found out, someone is gonna be furious, there's no doubt. People will ask me why I'm wound, wound. And this noose has got me tighter now, now, when all I have to do is stand at your arm. At your arm. The trees only know one season and it's great now. The birds only sing sad that spring she's sent away. Gonna be furious, there's no doubt. People will ask me why I'm wound, wound. And I let this noose get tighter now, now, when all I Now, if you will please welcome our next brave storyteller, Melissa Nolan.
Okay, this is both the most challenging and inspiring thing I've ever done. I thought long and hard about the stories I could share, all revolving around my life, my mental illness. And I bet most of you can relate to one of the reasons I go to therapy. I have daddy issues, body image issues, and suffer chronic pain from my fibromyalgia, which led to opioid addiction. I've been to jail, totaled my 4Runner in a full rollover accident, lived in a condo for 15 years and had 27 roommates, and I've been in abusive and toxic relationships. I've attended way too many funerals for friends lost too soon. Our new to us home flooded in Hurricane Harvey. We lost my estranged father to ALS 2 months later. My loyal dog, Chewbacca, passed at the age of 17 last year, and I've been searching for a new job for over 6 months now. I think you get the point. My life is not picture perfect. But I've also been very blessed throughout the years. I'm here tonight, which is amazing in itself, and let's just say I believe in guardian angels. I've made some awesome friends along the way, strengthened my relationship with my wonderful mother, reconnected with and married my high school sweetheart, stopped abusing drugs and alcohol, have a very loving dog named Fred, and was able to be a part of the brave cast and team that made tonight possible. So let's get started, because my story tonight is about my best friend, Bronwyn. Ask anyone who knows me, they'd probably say I'm a pretty happy person. Most people don't know about my mental illness or the hard stuff because it's easier to pretend that everything is okay and smile as if life is picture perfect. But is it really? The definition of picture perfect is completely flawless, immaculate, and unblemished, an unreasonably or impossibly high standard. The opposite would then be defective, faulty, imperfect, or bad. So where is the middle ground? My entire life, from as early as I can remember, I was an overachiever and my own worst critic. I'm not sure why I put so much pressure on myself, but it happened and it grew worse over the years. I also remember smiling through almost everything, oblivious to the pressure I was putting on myself. Bronwyn understood that pressure too. Growing up in Beaumont, we spent time riding bikes, having slumber parties, and just enjoying life. The sweet memories make me miss those carefree days. But really, how carefree were they? We were both in honor roll in school, excelled in athletics, were involved in church youth groups. The list goes on. I don't remember when or why we started partying. Maybe we were bored in a small town, and that's just what kids do. Or maybe we were already trying to escape the pressures of living a picture-perfect life. I'll never forget the day we were at her house and I saw her wrists. They had scars I'd never seen before, always carefully covered. We were 15 or 16 and had been friends for at least 10 years. How would I miss the signs? She shared with me that day, a very rare occurrence, but we never spoke of it again, as I was afraid to bring it up and push her away. After high school graduation, we went to different schools for college, and all I could think was, Who will watch out for her now? Freshman year, April 28th of 1999, 20 years ago today, is a day I will never forget. I had been cramming in my dorm room for my psychology exam, learning all about mental illness and suicide. I went to bed pretty late. My phone rang and I thought, who would call me in the middle of the night? It was a girl from high school. Bronwyn was gone. She ended her life. The following days, weeks, months, and even years are a blur. I had no idea how to cope with the pain, and neither did anyone around me. My family and friends couldn't handle me, so I continued doing what I always had, escaping reality and smiling through the pain. I read at her funeral, graduated from St. Edward's with high honors in 4 years, while holding down a full-time job, still partying like no tomorrow, and continuing to act as if everything was picture perfect. I learned to put on my mask, rarely letting others in, and not knowing how to ask for help, just smiling until I couldn't anymore. Nothing seemed to numb the pain. I was constantly taking life for granted, addicted to escaping reality with drugs and alcohol. Although I never tried to take my own life, I definitely did not respect it. I pushed my limits until one day a very alcoholic roommate asked me, "Are you okay?" This really made me stop and think. Luckily, I was able to recognize that no, I was not okay, and I got the help that I needed. It didn't happen overnight, and I'm still a work in progress, but I stopped the excessive partying, got back into therapy, and went to see a psychiatrist. I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety, ADHD, and PTSD. I took the medicine and went back to therapy, stayed on my meds, but quit therapy again. It was a vicious cycle, but I wasn't ready to do the hard work of getting better. Today, on the 20th anniversary of Bronwyn's death, I stand here as a survivor. I will always miss my friend and wonder what if. But I can also remember her fondly, and I am now doing the hard work of allowing myself to grieve. Every day is a struggle that I try to face with the best intentions. My life is not picture perfect, but that is no longer the goal. The last 6 months have been a battle. I've been searching for a new job. My depression and anxiety have been rearing their ugly heads. I'm currently going through some pretty intensive therapy and a medication change, which is always a little scary. But I have doctors who listen and care, an amazing husband, friends, and family who are loving and supportive. But most importantly, I finally have the faith in myself to know that I will not only survive, but will thrive. I am so proud to honor Bronwyn, all those who we've lost too soon, and everyone who bravely fights to live every single day. Mental illness and addiction are not going anywhere, even if some people pretend they don't exist. When we talk openly about mental health, we start the conversation and help to end the stigma. Life is not picture perfect. And for me, it requires a conscious choice to continue fighting. No one is flawless or unblemished, but we're not bad or defective either. I may not be everything my mind says I should be, but I'm done pretending to be someone I'm not. I may not be proud of some things in my past, but I am very proud of who I am today. I am perfectly imperfect. My name is Melissa Nolan, and this is my brave. welcome. Please welcome our next brave storyteller, Julia Polk.
Hey y'all. So Casey very lovingly opened us up with some deep breaths, and we're going to do a couple more right now because I think we all need them. All right, so I didn't realize bug bites could heal without scarring. 7-year-old me pondered this concept as I analyzed my friend's perfectly spotless leg, comparing it to mine, which was riddled with scars. I remember asking myself, how does she do that? How does she leave them alone long enough for them to go away on their own? These were some early signs. There are very few things that no one knows about me. Like, I like to ride horses. I was a pretty bomb gymnast at the age of 2. And I have dermatillomania. Dermatillomania is the compulsive act of continuously pulling or picking off one's skin to the point of distortion or discoloration. Also called excoriation disorder or chronic skin picking, it is classified as a body-focused repetitive behavior, and because of the compulsive component, it has been deemed closely related to obsessive compulsive disorder. But what does this all mean? For me, it means that when I'm stressed or bored, I pick at the skin on my fingers until they're raw. Or if I just so happen to be running my hands across my body and I feel an irregularity in my skin, it has to go. Scabs never heal and fade, they always turn into scars. Acne and pimples, might as well count those as permanent. I never registered the fact that I shouldn't have to be so disappointed about scratches and pimples and bug bites solely for the fact that they'd leave a long-lasting mark. My freshman year of college, I took a senior-level psychology course. In our discussion about abnormal psychology, DSM-5 classified chronic skin picking as excoriation disorder. This was the first I'd heard of this particular term, so I asked the professor, have you ever heard it called dermatillomania? The professor replied, no, it's always been excoriation disorder. So fast and matter-of-factly that I immediately felt myself shrink. By this point, most of my classmates had turned to look at me, and I felt their eyes glide over my skin, looking for how this disorder manifested itself in me, because why would anyone care so much to ask that question to this professor in this class? I filed this experience away as one of the many instances where I felt confused, embarrassed, and misunderstood about this disorder. When I was younger, my mother noticed this habit was creating unappealing markings and tried so many things to prevent me from picking. Band-aids, gloves, acrylic nails, anything to stop the scratching and the scarring, but nothing truly helped because I didn't see it as a problem. Fast forward to a few years ago, I realized it was an issue, and one that I was immensely ashamed of, and I was terrified of being viewed as insane. However, recently I've come to terms with the fact that the only way to heal from dermatillomania is to first accept it, and then for me, share it. Now is probably the point where you're wondering, why is it important that I know about this? It's imperative that despite the fear and shame I still have about this disorder, that I share my story. The first thing that the internet presented me with when I searched for dermatillomania was bloody pictures of people who had picked until whole chunks of their skin were gone. While those cases are legitimate, seeing those images is scary. You wonder if you're insane, and it's hard to accept a condition that is only represented by extremes. I want someone who may be looking for clarity or someone to relate to be able to see me and not just see depression or dermatillomania, but to see success. A few steps to coping with dermatillomania. First, accept it. Yes, it's embarrassing. Yes, it's often misunderstood, but there's no way to improve upon something you don't even acknowledge exists. Second, find ways to manage the compulsion. I'm majoring in American Sign Language. Coping for me looks like signing to myself to keep my hands busy in class or in the car or when I'm simply doing nothing. Some other methods that help with dermatillomania are fidget toys or writing, which I also do often. The hardest part is recognizing if I'm putting myself in situations that are compromising my mental or emotional health, and if that's making my picking worse. Managing my thinking and reactions in this regard is important as well, and honestly, half of the battle. Third, find someone you trust to keep you accountable. This is probably the other half of the battle. Dermatillomania is difficult to be vulnerable about because of its exaggerated nature and the fact that it can be relatively easy to hide behind the mirage of just a bad habit. However, finding someone who is understanding and non-judgmental to keep you accountable in your attempts to cope with this disorder is one of the keys to overcoming it. There are so many things I could have talked about today. My depression, my anxiety, or even my most recent suicide attempt that put me in the hospital. But I chose this topic because it is real. Skin picking may be forgotten in the self-harm and mental health communities, but it is legitimate. Dermatillomania has a face, and mine is one of them. And that's what you didn't know about me. Thank you. Please welcome our next brave storyteller, Shyla Salas, featuring Josh Zimmerman on the handpan.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to thank each and every single one of you for being here today, for witnessing me, and simply holding space for something that may seem in or out the norm to you. I ask at this very moment you embrace what you are currently feeling, whether it is love, fear, or confusion. What I perform for you this evening is more than just a performance. It is known as Buto, meaning the dance of darkness. Buto originated from Japan out of a time of chaos during the 1950s. Buto was created by its brilliant founding fathers, Tatsumi Hichikata and Kazuo Ono, whom were said to be trained dancers in their time. Hijikata was dissatisfied with the Japanese modern dance scene, and he wanted to stray away from Western influence, while Ono also wanted to bring light into Japan's time of turmoil. Thus, the two created a form of expression that allowed the body to speak for itself through unconscious improvised movement. Buto is the abandonment of the self and probably one of the most ego-free things I've ever done in my life. It is avant-garde. It is an offering, a ritual, incorporating sacred objects, a movement meditation, a sacred spiritual dance, and a form of therapy to many, including myself. Buto, along with my beautiful ecstatic dance community, have taught me to heal in ways you will never know until you experience it. The reason why Buto has been a huge part of my life is to finally reveal something that I have never expressed to an audience and even loved ones here tonight. Today, I take a leap of faith by telling you that my name is Shyla Lene Salvis, and I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder shortly after I attempted suicide on April 6, 2015. It was then I discovered I struggled greatly with dissociation, depersonalization, derealization, mania, depression, and anxiety, things I denied myself of feeling since I was a child. I just thought things were okay, you know? Now, before some of you go and Google, I ask that you not judge a book by its cover, but learn through its story, just like my story tonight, where I dance with light and dark of my sacred objects, which were my gown and bracelet when I was hospitalized. I'm not sure if I'll ever see the world the way I used to, and I don't know if I'll experience these symptoms forever. But I know I won't surrender to my diagnosis, and I will continue fighting and dancing towards stability. So today is the day I strip off these Band-Aids, because I am tired of feeling as if I need to hide to suit the comfort of others while I sit in my discomfort, especially if I am moving towards a stable way of living. Thank you all to these beautiful people behind me for holding space, because if it weren't for them, if it weren't for this entire team, I can't tell you, I don't think I would have ever done this. Not anytime soon. And I'm proud to say that today, this is finally my brave. And with that being said, we are going to close my Buto ritual. So at this very moment, I want you to hold yourself right now, ladies and gentlemen, placing your hands on your heart, your gut, your head, or even the hand of a loved one. And when I count to 3, we're going to take a deep breath in. And I want all of you to breathe in all of this energy, this exact moment. And on that exhale, I want you to send out love, compassion, and healing towards yourself, a loved one, the earth, the cosmos. And remember, it is never too late to find an outlet for healing. 1, 2, 3. There we go. Thank you, everyone. With that being said, I have the honor of introducing two amazing people I'm actually really excited to meet today. We have Dr. Elizabeth Mackingville and Jim Mackingville. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you for having us, and thank you for an absolutely incredible event and space for people to be able to be who we are. More importantly, thank you to all of you. I cannot see one of you. It is absolutely pitch black, but I know you're there. So thank you to every single one of you and every individual on this stage for showing up. For those of us who live with a mental illness, getting out of bed is often the hardest feat of the day. Your presence alone shows your dedication and willingness to be a part of a change that has never been more needed in a society. With suicide rates continuing to increase and mental illness continuing to increase, we know there is a need that's being unmet. But the part that none of us living with mental illness can understand is why we're afraid to talk. I grew up in the north suburbs of Houston with parents who live and work every day in the city and are grateful to be Houstonians. I grew up in a household of parents who work all the time and taught us that work is God's greatest blessing. When I was a kid, those of you who know my dad, and if you don't know him, you'll learn about him in a second when he gets up here. He's not too shy of a person, so I don't feel like I have to worry about that. But growing up, the motto was, late to bed, early to rise, work like hell, and advertise. If you understand our family's business, it's a furniture business. My dad is certainly good at advertising and good at working long hours. And so we learned early on this importance of a work ethic, the importance of being brave. I heard my family's business story over and over as a kid, where my parents started their business with $3,800 cash, moved to Houston from Dallas, and believed in this dream of being able to serve their community and serve others and give people opportunities to work and to have a purpose. Growing up, I was always taught that we would have a purpose. I was also a gymnast and was an Olympic hopeful gymnast and really had these huge dreams and aspirations. I always figured I'd go to college and I would be successful in some way, maybe doing business or who knows. And then at the age of 12, everything changed for myself and our family. I started having these bizarre, unwanted, intrusive thoughts that I didn't understand, I didn't know how to get rid of, that shook me to my core. Horrible thoughts like, if I don't do this behavior, something bad will happen to someone I love. If I don't do this action, someone I love will die or won't go to heaven. And pretty soon I started engaging in these bizarre rituals, also known as compulsions. And within a few years, I went from a fully functioning kid to someone who begged my mom, sister, and dad to kill me every day of my life. I didn't see how there could possibly be a way out that made sense. I
I didn't understand how I could be brave through this situation. I had parents who could afford treatment. I had parents who had connections to get me the best treatment. And so we searched through Houston, biggest medical center in the world, 4th biggest city in the nation, and we were continuously told the same thing. Your daughter has obsessive compulsive disorder, but we've never seen a case as severe as hers. There's not help available, and you should accept the fact that she'll live in a mental health hospital the rest of her life. Thank God my parents are sellers, not buyers. You can visit the furniture store and learn that for yourself. But they weren't buying that story. And you know, I still question why. The reality is that the mental health professionals, the doctors, the people who are supposed to know it all were the ones telling them that there wasn't help available for me. Neither my parents are healthcare professionals, and so it would have been really simple for them to listen to the advice. But the reality is that my mom, my dad, and my siblings, they were the ones who had to be brave.
I got 2 minutes. I got to talk fast. I'm good at that. So I came home one night and Linda said there's something terribly wrong with Elizabeth. I said, what is it? We'll get it fixed. Says she's got this weird disease where she washes her hands 600 to 800 times a day, and she does all these strange rituals and compulsions, and she's afraid to go back to the public high school she goes to, Westfield High School. She thinks it's contaminated. So we took her to several local area psychiatrists, and they all said the same thing she said: no hope for this child. And so we kept looking and looking and looking. It was blood curdling as my wife lived upstairs with Liz for 2 years. And she would scream every night, God, what did I do to deserve this? I wish I was dead. And quite often she'd get a butcher knife and give it to her beloved sister and beg her to kill her. It was hell on earth. You see, when one family member has a mental illness, everybody has a mental illness. Mental illness, as you know, is a cruel disease. No one knows who it may strike or why. Mental illness never goes away. It lasts forever. My child will always be walking on the edge of a cliff, and I cannot keep her from falling. But because of faith, because of God's grace, this child, who they said would never graduate from high school, and this child who we used to drive on Westheimer, and she'd see the homeless people there, she would say then, she says now, I'm one family away from being on the streets. Now she has a PhD in social work, and she's a professor at Baylor College of Medicine, because she would never give up. Hope springs eternal in the human breast. And I think what we need to do in Houston is be a world leader in accepting the fact that mental illness is like a cough, a cold, heart disease, or cancer, and we need to get mental illness out of the closet and get more money spent on helping people with mental illness so they can live a healthy and fruitful and meaningful life. God gave Liz her life back, and she has dedicated her life to helping others. And you know, when you get to be my age at 68, you realize that life is not about you, it's about helping others. And I want to thank all the brave speakers here tonight for being so brave to come up and tell their story. And our story, all of us here tonight, is a story of resilience, a story of hope, and a story of #overcome that mental illness and live a life worth living. Thank you.
At the age of 15, my parents kidnapped me Literally, they had to kidnap me. I had a Navy SEAL waiting to tackle me when I tried to run away. That's a story for another day. And took me on a plane to an inpatient facility called the Menninger Clinic, which was in Topeka, Kansas at the time. It was February 5th of 2002, a cold, snowy, dreary day in Topeka. It was a day that I thought was the end of my life. I thought that my parents were getting rid of me because I was a burden, because of a disease I would have done anything to get rid of. I actually thought what was happening was what I had been told, that this was the first day in a mental health hospital where I would spend the rest of my life. 3 things happened that day that were miraculous. The first is that my parents were brave. They made the choice to walk out of that clinic when my face was pressed against the glass doors with tears streaming down my face, begging them please not to leave, that I would try harder. The second is that I walked into the living room and sat down on a couch next to a young redhead girl named Amy, and all she said was, "It's okay, I cried too." The third was that I met with a provider who would become my mentor, who undoubtedly changed the direction of my life forever. For the first time in my life, there was a community and people who were suffering just like me. And for the first time in my life, there was providers who actually knew how to help. 90 days later, I left the Menninger Clinic and got to come on a plane back home to Houston. I re-enrolled in school and continued my life, but I still had OCD. I still have OCD. There's nothing that bothers me more than when people say, "But look at you now. You're doing so great. You're holding a job. You're maintaining your lifestyle. What's it like to be cured?" It's funny. I am happy you guys can understand and relate. Right? There is no cure for those of us who live with chronic mental health conditions. I will live with this illness every day for the rest of my life. I wish I could tell you there were days that I don't have OCD. What I can tell you is that I'm grateful to be alive. What I can tell you is that with the right tools and the right team, I've learned how to be brave. Sometimes for me, being brave is waking up and making it to the shower. Sometimes it's facing my thoughts that come every night. But the reality is that what I've learned is that telling my story and speaking out and speaking my truth has helped other people. And for the first time in my life, despite my issues and despite the struggles that I will always deal with, I know undoubtedly that there is a purpose to this pain. And that by telling our story, we can give a voice to the voiceless that so many people need. Thank you all so much. And please welcome our last storyteller, RJ Wright.
another second or another minute, not an hour of another day. But at this moment with my arms outstretched, Lord, I need you right away. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is RJ Wright. I usually like to start off before I do like poems and stuff to sing because it lowers expectations. So I am a poet. I am a mental health care professional. I currently work at the Harris Center for Mental Health and IDD. I have been in the Army now for going on, it'll be 10 years coming in February. Thank you. I'm a retired community college athlete. You can laugh at that one. And before I start doing my poem, I just have a question. Did anyone in here ever deal with teenage angst? Go ahead and put your hand up. You dealt with teenage angst? Okay, cool. So me too. I dealt with teenage angst at like 8. And then again at 12. And then all of my teenage years. And then my 20s. And then like 3 months ago. It's really confusing. So I'm a part of like a lot of communities that don't really talk about mental health. And so I was never given like the tools to speak about it. And I had a lot of people that struggle with mental health around me. At the age of, I believe I was 15, I was on a basketball team. One of the members of my basketball team committed suicide. And I thought, okay, let's process this, and you feel sad sometimes, but let's not like focus on any of that. Okay. So then I get to the age of, I think it was 26, and my sister-in-law commits suicide. And I know that she struggled with mental health, and like I had talked to her about her mental health. I was going to school for psychology, so I was like, yeah, I know kind of a little bit about this, but I never really recognized all the symptoms in me. And then last year, someone that I serve with, someone who was a commander of one of the units that was in my battalion, committed suicide. And I just remember thinking, how could I have helped? What could I have done different? And I remember thinking, I can barely get out of bed sometimes, and is this going to be how I end up? And I remember praying a lot about it and never really having the words to, like, throughout all of that time, talk about what my depression was. So I'm gonna do a poem about that. But before I do this poem, I like to be like interactive, right? Because like performance poets, we're vain, so we need you to respond to us. So everyone go ahead and snap for me. Say, ooh, that part. You can do better than that. That part. See, you're loyal, you're smart. I like y'all. Okay, all right. So if you hear something that you like in the poem, go ahead and you can snap, you can ooh, you can ah, you can clap. I'm not gonna be offended. It's actually gonna feed my ego. I appreciate it. My depression is not a satisfying lover, but it is a faithful one. If I let it, it will seduce me into never leaving my bed. My depression doesn't always look like depression, though. Sometimes it Halloween costumes itself into a victory dance and prays that you don't ask, how are you? And mean it. It looks like the space between my couch and TV when being a human in public is too exhausting. But sometimes it sounds like the next round is on me, y'all, because the best place to hide is where everyone can see you, but no one is looking for you. My depression is demanding. Wants me to go back to my last failed relationship because it's convinced me that no one will ever love me half as badly as they did. My depression says a full bed is better than all this empty. You know, I was happy once, but time wounds all happy. Or healing is a happy wound. Or happiness be the most fragile of children, but children be the most resilient of humans. Basically what I'm saying is being an adult and keeping my happy whole and healthy is a magic trick I haven't learned yet. My depression and my masculinity are drinking buddies. Frenemies who bare knuckle brawl with each other, and anything that is good for me, my masculinity says, you ain't that hard. You ain't that tired. Water's for cowards. Walk it off. Water's for cowards. You don't get no blood on my uniform. You must be outside your mind. So sometimes my masculinity sounds like Denzel Washington in Remember the Titans. It's not always attempting to be toxic. Sometimes it's just trying to remind me that I am stronger than everything that is failing to kill me. That dying ain't dead, so rise and walk. And when it hurts to walk, run. Run till you learn to fly. And if you never learn to fly, then thank God for working feet and almost wings. See how when you started to run, you stopped thinking. Stop noticing all the pain in your chest. Focus on all the alive in your chest. Now focus, 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 focus. You almost did it. Yes, you did it. You got out of bed. Thank you.
Holy Mother of God. RJ.
RJ Wright, everybody.
RJ. And all of them. All of them. All right. If you were moved by what you witnessed here tonight, and you'd like to make a contribution to This Is My Brave to help us continue this vitally important work, please text the word BRAVE to 41444. You'll receive a reply text with a link, and then you'll click the link, and you'll be able to make a donation in the amount of your choice. Or you can become a Brave Champion with a recurring monthly donation of just $10 or more. And there's info on joining our program. Go ahead.
Okay, our Brave cast was able to shine a light tonight on a topic we don't talk about enough. I'd like to take a moment to ask our audience to be brave with us and to please stand if you yourself have experienced a mental health disorder or if you love someone who has. Look around you. We are all affected by mental illness, and simply being here today was an incredible start to building upon a movement of people who are willing to be more open and supportive to those who are struggling. We hope you'll think of This Is My Brave and that you'll use this experience you've shared with us today as a way to start the conversation and keep it going. This is what it means to live brave. We'd love to meet you in the lobby where we can gather and visit with all of you and our storytellers and sponsors. But first, and some of our storytellers have merchandise and CDs and cool stuff for you to look at too. So first, one more round of applause for our Brave cast.
I would like to say on behalf of the Brave cast, we want to recognize and honor Melissa Nolan for her hard work, for tireless efforts drove this show to happening. We are so grateful to you and for your work in organizing, coordinating, and wrangling all of us to do the things that we needed to do.